Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Pepin. I'm Chief Executive of Philanthropy Impact. I don't normally do these introductions, so I won't be nearly as brilliant as Sophia, but please tolerate that. Welcome to our Walk in My Shoes series. We've had over 90 of these. You can see them on YouTube. It's all around thought leadership and inspiring people. And I think we have someone who's really quite inspiring today. And it's one of the many benefits of being part of Philanthropy Impact. These sessions are being recorded and will be available on YouTube channel in a couple of days. So if you want to look at it and potentially use it, then feel free to do so. Just let us know. And just look up Philanthropy Impact on YouTube. It's a 30-minute session. If you're watching live, then I feel like this is a typical show like Graham Norton, where they tape it on Thursday and show it on Friday. We all pretend we're live, but anyway, we're live now. If you wish to ask a question, please put it in the chat. But because it's 30 minutes, it'll be quite difficult for it to answer any more than one or two. So we'll try our best. So today we have Doug Miller, who I'll ask to introduce himself in a second, and Amy Blackwell. So Amy and I are here to grill Doug in this live event. So good luck, Doug. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Amy, who are you?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Amy Blackwell. I am a philanthropy and impact specialist, and I work with families and foundations and family offices to build and deliver their strategies for impact through philanthropy, but also through impact investing and social lending. And it is a pleasure to be here. I think Doug is a fabulous example of a lifetime of commitment. So I'm looking forward to the interview.
Good. I've always enjoyed hearing what you're doing because, of course, we operate across the spectrum of capital from philanthropy right through to impact investing. And it's really important that professional advisors and their clients take a look at operating across that. We're finding through our research that Gen Z, millennials, women of wealth, are really looking to do good with their capital, and that's either in impact investing or philanthropy. So thank you for being here, Amy. Okay, Doug, thank you for coming on this. Could you just tell us a bit about who you are before we start asking questions?
Sure. Kansas, a farm state in the middle of the U.S. Moved to London in 1979 and had a house in Surrey up until October of last year. So a little over half my life has been connected to the UK. So I'm pleased to be talking to people, possibly more than just people from the UK, but I've been in almost all of the other European countries as well. My time in London was in the commercial world up until 2004, when I switched entirely to the philanthropic world. So pleasure to be here.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I've known you since around 2004, 2003, and always admired your work and what you've accomplished. And you've accomplished quite a bit in terms of helping to make venture philanthropy a common activity in many parts of the world. So whether it's in the UK and across Europe with EVPA or in Asia, etc. So I'm looking forward to learning more about your motivation. So maybe you could talk about why you have such a strong commitment, and when you left your career to work in philanthropy, why are you looking at helping others? What's your motivation?
Okay, before I do that, I found something that I just wanted to show the audience. This is a document that was written by John in 2004 called Venture Capitalists and Entrepreneurs Become Venture Philanthropists. So I thought we had invented the thing, but John was actually a year ahead of us. anyway, in terms of my own journey, I want to start by saying often I'm giving credit for a lot of things that have happened, but I always reply that it's all about the team. It's the people you surround yourself with who do the execution, who really make things happen. I learned this when I was in the Army, and I have followed this all along. So I really think I want to focus on the team as opposed to myself. But from my own journey, it was in 1962, JFK said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." I was 18 years old, which means I'm 78 now, I think, going on 79 in October. But I was
happy birthday.
Thank you. I was very enthusiastic at the time, so I signed up when I graduated from university to go to the Peace Corps, and I was assigned to go to French West Africa. 10 days before I was leaving for Africa, I got a draft notice to join the Army. So I went from helping people on the one hand to potentially killing people on the other hand. Obviously, I didn't appreciate this opportunity, but it was what it was. I was fortunate enough to become an officer and then to become an officer in the Special Forces, which is the equivalent to the SAS in the UK. And this is a very intense type of work to do, as you can imagine. But fortunately, I survived the war. I went back to my university to get a master's degree. At that time, it was 1969, and there was a big anti-war movement at that point in time. Also, Martin Luther King had been killed 1 year before, so there was a racial equity movement. And also, very importantly, there was a gender movement. So all those three movements came together, and I grew my hair down to here, not quite as long as Amy's, but I had the opportunity to have a beard and a mustache, and I was a student protester. And that's where I got interested in trying to help change happen in the world. On graduation, however, I started to think that all of these protesters are fine. They put the agenda up, but how do you actually find solutions? And I felt that finding solutions, you probably had to make some money. You probably had to be able to contact corporates and contact governments. So I cut my hair, shaved my beard, kept my mustache, and went into the commercial world in a bank, the largest bank in Chicago. Because I'd been in the Army, and more particularly because of the Special Forces training, I was way ahead of my peer group who had gone to Stanford and Harvard and places like that, because I knew how to do execution, which I believe is more important actually than strategy, although you have to have a good strategy. Anyway, fast forward, I used those talents and skills, went up through the bank until I was eventually president of the private equity division. And then after a fairly short period of time, I started my own company in the UK. So that gave me the freedom to do what I wanted to do. And part of that was philanthropy. So I got to philanthropy because of my experience from the student protesting and from other things. And then it went from there.
Okay. So you in effect applied the 60s ethos to your life in a way. So the ideal part of what happened in the 60s and 70s, and it's been one of the keys to motivating you.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, when I got to the UK, I discovered a thing called Small is Beautiful, and I discovered an organization called it's now called Practical Action. It was called something else at the Intermediate Technology, I think is what it was called. Anyway, I did a lot of projects in Peru, Nepal, Sri Lanka, around micro hydro and around wind energy. So in the 70s, we were talking about clean energy, but it wasn't from a clean energy point of view. It was providing electric power to people who were off the national grid, because these countries couldn't afford to put in power lines to remote areas, particularly mountain areas.
So you mentioned the word team and how important team is to you. But you in effect have been a catalyst to a lot of different things going on. So AVPN, for example, you played a significant role at the beginning of that. AVPN as well in Asia and other areas. So that was in effect supporting and encouraging and developing philanthropy impact on a worldwide basis. So what do you think are the most important things about philanthropy and especially about venture philanthropy, and how this all fits with your approach to philanthropic giving?
Well, in 2002, I took a group of 27 private equity folk from 9 countries to Vietnam to raise money for mine clearing operations. And we were quite successful on what we did. The principle is a lot of these mines and unexploded ordnance of mortar shells, bombs, et cetera, were killing actually grandchildren of the people that they were intended to kill. And if you could get them out of the area, it would be better for everybody. But during that trip, the 27 of us discussed what we were doing in philanthropy, and we decided that we weren't happy with it, and there was an opportunity to do something else. And so we discovered venture philanthropy about probably the same time you did, John. But we went to the US and we looked at what was happening in the US. And we went to see the 4 leading organizations there. And we came back and we said, why don't we provide the infrastructure that brings more capital to the market? It brings more specific knowledge to the market. And that's when we started EVPA, and that was started in my son's bedroom when he was away at UCL for university. And the principle that we had, which is hugely important, and I'll mention another book, which is called The Ugly American, which the UK probably knows a fair amount about, but it says Americans are really nice people, but they go around the world telling everybody what to do, which is not a way to make friends necessarily. So we decided that we would have individual organizations on each continent. So the European one was incubated in London in my son's bedroom, but we moved it to Belgium once it got 100 members, so it could be closer to the EU and also could be seen to be European. And all of the board, except myself, and I only stayed there kind of during the incubation period, was to the decisions would be made by people who were closer to the action and who had to suffer the benefits or the consequences if it didn't go well. And then we just rolled that out. We used that experience. I'd been working a lot in Asia during my commercial world, and we rolled that out to AVPN, and I was chairman there for about 6 years. And we grew that and grew a team from nothing to, when I left, about 30 people, and now about 65 people. Successor was very successful. And then I moved on to Africa and Latin America. But all of those are independent. But then we decided that we needed something to bring the whole group together. So I formed IVPC in 2017 or 18. And that one really has the mission for intellectual transfer between units, other things in terms of getting membership between units, getting funding. Everybody is independent, but we try to help each other out.
So again, all of these different areas where you're a catalytic force to bring people together to achieve all this. And then when it got on its feet, then you could move on to another activity. So it's very entrepreneurial. It's sort of a venture capital approach to philanthropy, isn't it?
Yes, I mean that was the whole thing. But what we needed to create, if you look at it, there's plenty of financial resources out here, and that comes from foundations. It comes from high net worth individuals. It comes from all sorts of areas. And there's, let's see if I can get my hands in the right place. Down here, there's all these people, whether it's education or medicine or climate or rural development, who actually need the money. But unlike the commercial world, there's no way to have that money transmitted. So that was one of the big things we wanted to do. But we also thought that the methodology of funding social enterprises or charities could be made much more effective if you brought in human and intellectual capital. So just handing somebody a bunch of money, that's obviously helpful. But if you can bring some intelligence in some ways of them improving their business, that helps a lot. And if you can bring people to help them, then that's even better. So each of these organizations have 7 different types of people. So everybody thinks of philanthropy, they think of foundations. So we have foundations that are members. We have high net worth families that are members. We have corporates that are members, and they bring both money, but also the human capital. We have professional service firms, which include philanthropy advisors, but also include headhunters and accountants and lawyers who do stuff for free. Philanthropy advisors sometimes are free and sometimes are not. Skoll came to us, and this was huge win for us, because they came and said, look, we like what you're doing. We'd like to become a member. And to be honest, our first thought was, we're not going to do research, right? And our second thought was, wow, really intelligent, well-connected people go to Oxford. These would be good people to have, because we can plant the seed so that when Maslow's hierarchy of needs kicks in at the age of about 45, these people will be philanthropically minded. And now, we've got universities, about 45 of them from at least 30 different countries. So, I mean, Cambridge is also from the UK, and Warwick is a member. And then the last people we got, or we wanted to get, but we had to get big enough, was governments. And so we moved EVPA to be close to the European Union. That just so happened to be in 2008. And we thought it would take us like 3 or 4 years for the European Union to recognize us. And they recognized us immediately because they were in a crisis, an economic crisis, and they thought maybe we could help from the social side.
Oh, that's true.
In Asia, we got the Economic Development Board.
Well, that's terrific. It's quite inspiring. Amy, you've been so patient. Do you want to cut in here?
Yeah, Doug, I'd love to ask, I mean, it's been a second career really in venture philanthropy for you. And so I'm sure you've seen incredible changes over the last 20 years in people's approaches and what good practice looks like. So from a practical perspective, what are the real changes you've seen, and have they been for the better?
Well, I'll answer that last question first. Absolutely, it's better. But why is it better? There's a much higher level of awareness about so social media and all of that has been very helpful. The relationships with universities who have done research, and that's been very good. The wealth management advisors. I don't know if you go back to 2004 or 5, how many there were certainly some, because we interfaced with UBS and some of those other people at that time. But that's positive. The methodology is also better, and the only thing that we kind of take credit for is the methodology. Everything else has been done by other people. As there's a lot of other people obviously in the sector now, and we feel that that's good. As a matter of fact, I like the fact that there's competition of ideas. So what specifically are the benefits? The specific things, I think, is what I call respect for the entrepreneur. It used to be when people were giving away money, it was kind of, top down, and top down was we've got the money and this is what we think you should do and how you should do it. Well, that is not a successful model at all, because just because you have the money doesn't mean you have the relevant knowledge. So funding, whoever heard of starting a business with 1 year funding? Whoever heard of expanding a business with 1 year funding? So, we preach, if you can't do 3 years, just don't do it. Now, you can put performance measurement on there so that if the end of the first year, they're not living up to, what they promised they would do. First of all, you ask them what the issues were, and they hopefully you're interfacing with them during the year. But if you're unhappy, you can always quit. But go in there with the proposition that you're going to fund them for some reasonable period of time, and I think 3 years are minimum. I usually give 5 year commitments. By the way, I don't have any money now, so anybody who's out there, you can. But no, there's just a lot more awareness. The next gen, I think that's working out well. The fact, and I hate to say this, I hate to say it, but reluctant, but women live longer than men, and I think they're more philanthropically minded, perhaps, and there's money passed to women that way. Or if you take the Gates situation or the Bezos situation, a lot of money passes through divorce, and that's helpful. I think impact investment is helpful. I have some concerns about impact investment because I know the tension between financial return and social return, but done correctly, I think that's been a huge lift to it. So there's just a lot of things that would make one positive. The negative one is that almost every government, the UK, the US, and a whole lot of others, have funded themselves with debt up into the trillions, and government is in a position that they're going to have to do less, or there's going to be a fight over resources. So there's going to be a lot of issues ahead, and I say to the next gens, whenever I'm in a position I can, that they should get engaged and get active now, because they're going to inherit a very difficult situation when they become adults and parents.
So Doug, when you meet a family that's very motivated and very excited, but pretty much paralyzed by how do you start, what's your advice for taking those initial steps to start to do this?
Well, first of all, it's pick one or a maximum of 2 sectors with your heart, something that you really feel strongly about. And the reason is because whatever you do in anything in philanthropy is going to be hard. And if you don't feel very strongly about it, you're going to say, this is too hard and I'm going to move on. And it's what I call spray and pray. If people are putting a little bit in environment and a little bit in education and a little bit in other issues, they're not going to learn enough. So I would say, and I have 2 children who are in their 40s and grandchildren who are, the youngest is 10 and the oldest is 11 or 12. I'm preparing them for, taking over the family foundation. And so it's a learning curve for everybody. So that would be the first thing I would say. And the other would be what I would say before is respect the social entrepreneur themselves. Hugely important.
Amy, do you have any other questions? Because we've only got 3 minutes left. So
No, I'll let you wrap it up.
okay. Doug, we should have done this for an hour. I mean, it's just gone so quickly. Just a couple of quick things. We just recently did some independent research interviewing millennials, Gen Z, all wealth holders. So they actually control the wealth, and non-professional advisors. The role of professional advisors is really intriguing because they said that the interviewees, the millennials, Gen Z, said that they want to align their wealth with their values and do good with their money, whether it's philanthropy or impact investing. But they also said the advisory industry is falling short of the expectations of these people. And in some cases, they're firing their advisors because the advisors aren't supporting them on that journey. The other thing other point I would make is the research has just come out with Fidelity, where it showed that firms that supported their clients on their donor journey had 6 times the median access, 3 times growth, 1/3 money, and higher trust levels. So it's commercially beneficial to companies to do this. So the points you've been making about philanthropists and the work they're doing and the application of venture capital to venture philanthropy is really quite phenomenal. So I want to thank you personally, knowing you all these years, and I've always admired what you've been doing. So thank you. So I'm going to ask final words of wisdom. I'll start with Amy, and then I'll give the last word to you, Doug.
I guess, Doug sort of touched a bit on my last point, which is that, if it was easy, all the problems would have been solved. So it's not easy. But I do believe one of my favorite quotes from Colin Powell is that optimism is a force multiplier. And I do believe that if you feel it and it's joyful and you try and you accept that part of the journey will include failure and you see that as a gift to learn and pivot, then this journey can be the most exciting thing that you and your family can do with your money.
And the worst you're going to get is a no. And someday I'll share with you my worst no ever, but I still sort of shake from it. Doug, you've dealt with uncertainty. You've created a lot of stuff. So what are your final words of wisdom?
I think I would encourage people to think big. When we started EVPA, everybody said it was impossible. When we started programs around recruiting underprivileged scholarship students, which I did with the University of Warwick, which was Bangladeshi and Pakistani, everybody said that was hard. If you have a plan, if you have commitment, if you think big, you can actually make things happen. I could go on and on about how to do that. But if anybody wants to think big and they've got projects, I'm retired now. I'm focusing on other philanthropy stuff in the U.S., but I'd be happy to speak with anybody if they have, not for money, but if they have advice that they would like to get. So thank you, and thanks to the audience for participating.
Well, thank you, Doug. It's been brilliant knowing you, and I hope that goes on for years and years and years. And for a live event, you've done really well. So thank you.
Well, I had some script papers here, but I never had a chance to look at them. So
great. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye,
okay.
everybody.
Thanks again.